It's the Go Gopher Podcast with Mike Grimm, episode 106. I am Mike Grimm, voice of the Golden Gophers, and welcome back to the podcast. We're doing a double dose of Gopher sports today. We're leading off with women's hockey head coach Brad Frost. His team is ranked 5th in the country, has won 4 straight games, and sits at 25-1 on the season. Minnesota will host St. Thomas this weekend in a WCHA series. We'll also chat with Gopher women's gymnastics coach Jenny Hansen about her team's fast start. The 16th ranked Gophers are 6-0 on the year and will take on number 30 Penn State on Saturday in Happy Valley. Episode number 106 with Brad Frost and Jenny Hansen is set to go. Our Go Gopher podcast is presented by alumni-owned Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're a business founder planning to exit your business, start by contacting Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. Sunbelt serves more businesses up to $5 million in revenue than anyone, and True North M&A serves companies with revenues up to $150 million. You can get a confidential, no-cost, no-obligation business valuation started today. Make the most of your life's work. Visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com today. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union is also a big sponsor of our Go Gopher podcast. Life math is complicated, and Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union makes it easier with local financial experts available to help in person or virtually. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. They have an award-winning mobile app, so check that out as well. We're also sponsored by Cub, a proud sponsor of the Go Gopher podcast. In a hurry, don't worry. Cub delivers. Get fresh meat, produce, everyday essentials, and more delivered to your door. Cub is the official grocer of the Golden Gophers and proud to support Gopher athletics for over 20 years. We're podcasting episode 106 from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We invite you to subscribe to the Go Gopher podcast. It's free to do so. You can go back and listen to the Go Gopher podcast from previous weeks. Last episode, for example, we had a great conversation with former Gopher football center Nathan Bowe of Lakeville, the basic poster child for home state kids to stay home to play football. It was a compelling conversation and still quite timely, so go back and have a listen. I know you'll enjoy it. This week, we have hockey and gymnastics, starting with women's hockey coach Brad Frost. Here's my chat with him on episode number 106. Brad Frost joins us here on the Go Gopher podcast, your team coach. First of all, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. 20
wins and 5 losses. You've won 4 straight. How do you like what's happening now with your club?
Yeah, I like how our team's playing, and we had a tough weekend a few weekends ago against the number 1 team in the country. They're by far the best team in the country, and we've slowly, kind of rebuilt. You learn a lot when you lose. You learn even more when you get beat badly, which we hadn't been beat like that. I don't know if I've experienced that in my career, quite frankly. So, we've gotten better. We were even better this past weekend at Mankato, and now have a good St. Thomas team coming in as well. So we're looking forward to the weekend, and quite frankly, we only got a month left here of the regular season, so things continue to fly by.
Yeah, we talked last week. You said it's amazing how fast it'll go. Before you know it, we'll be talking about playoffs and postseason, and so you got to take advantage of things here down the stretch, right?
For sure. Yeah, and points in our league really matter. I'm not sure anybody can catch Ohio State, but right now us and Wisconsin are battling for that 2 and 3 spot, and then St. Cloud and Duluth are battling for that 4 or 5 spot. So getting home ice advantage for the playoffs is big, and obviously some matchups are pretty big as you get into that as well.
You mentioned that Ohio State weekend, and you mentioned they're by far the best team. How can you, between now and playoff time, close that gap and give yourself a shot, and maybe not just you, but other teams as well?
Yeah, well, I think, the great things about playoffs is you start getting into those one-and-done scenarios, right? And when we played them at their place, we lost in overtime one game and lost 6-5 in another, and so we were right there. We will have to come up with probably a better game plan. We've got a team that likes to play offensively. We've gotten better defensively. but it's still a change for some of our offensive players to really think about playing well in our end. And so when we get to that point, it's either you do it or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you don't, we can see what has happened. We've experienced it.
Yeah, and you don't want to go through a weekend like that, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it and say, oh, well, sometimes it's good for a program to do that, but can you take something from it and try to say, here's examples and here's where we go from here?
For sure, yeah. It exposes some of our weaknesses. The gap is not that big between us and them.
Yeah.
Like the scores indicated, we had a bad 8 minutes in the first period where they scored 4 goals. In game 1, we had a bad second period, about 9 minutes where they scored 4 goals. And that's not indicative of how we normally play and what we give up. So, but yeah, I mean, you learn from wins, but you learn a lot more from your losses. And, it was a humbling experience, I think, for everybody. And so now it's okay. We got the players' attention the following week, I can tell you that. And all of a sudden they're listening a little more and ready to compete.
And now, at least for the moment, they're in the rearview mirror. You will not see them until the playoffs, right?
Yep, exactly.
If it even works out to that,
Correct.
Depending on what happens, whether you guys advance or maybe they get upset, maybe you face them in the first round.
Yeah,
Who knows?
you never know.
Yeah.
You never
Both
know.
in conference and region.
Yeah. They're going to finish one in conference. If we finish in the 4 or 5 spot and advance out of the first round of the WCHA playoffs, we would play them. Otherwise, if we're in the 2 or 3 spot, we would most likely see them, in the championship game at Ritter.
Right. What makes them good? What have they done?
They're super experienced. They've got all 6 of their defense are seniors or super seniors. They're 4 lines deep, which in women's hockey is not normal. And when I say 4 lines deep, I don't just mean they can play. Their 4th line has a couple under 22 players on there. They had an Olympian, Swedish Olympian on there. I think their 4th line actually scored on the weekend 4 or 5 goals against us when they played us. And so 11 transfers on the team. They're experienced. They're old. And Muzzy does a really good job getting them going. So all in all, they're just a really complete hockey team.
All right, so we'll hopefully see them down the road, and you can get a shot at them, right?
That's the plan.
Yeah. A lot of hockey, though. Even though it goes fast, there is still a lot of hockey between now and then. You mentioned St. Thomas this weekend. I want to look back, though, following that Ohio State weekend, as if that was kind of a rough one to go through enough. Then you had the health issues, right?
Yeah,
it was at the very following week.
Yeah, it was that night. It was that night. I think those games put me into my medical condition. But I had some kidney stones. I've had them before, but these ones were pretty bad. They just in the middle of the night hit me. Had to go to the ER, and they continued to come back every 10 to 12 hours or so, and ultimately needed some surgery midweek, and finally was able to feel better the following week. So first time in 17 years as a head coach that I missed games, so that was difficult to sit there and lay on the couch and watch. But great staff, and our team found a way.
Yeah, you won 2 in Bemidji. You mentioned, we don't have to go into great detail, but to end up needing surgery, it tells you what kind of pain you were in. I know you went to the ER a couple of different times over the course of that week, but you made reference last week when we chatted, and I thought it was interesting. I think it's worth talking about here in the podcast that you guys had in the preseason talked about how you want outsiders to view the team, and for at least a couple of days, you were kind of an outsider. You had to watch. Did you watch on TV or on a laptop or how?
Yeah, BTN Plus and Fox 9 Plus. Yeah, so I was able to watch on TV.
So you watch on TV, but you're miles away, which I'm sure stunk for a head coach. You want to be around your group, right?
Yep.
That said, you talked about the fact that there was some benefit because you guys made it a point to say, how do we want to be viewed by someone who wouldn't know us and just came in and watched? And so you had a little bit of that view, and you didn't particularly care for maybe what you saw for a few of those minutes. So take me through that whole thing.
Yeah, so at the beginning of the year, we did an exercise where Boom May, our associate head coach, who was at Augsburg, he had done this with all of his teams that he had coached over the years. And, what do we want to be known by? So if somebody comes into the rink and watches us practice or sees us in the weight room or sees one of our games, what are 3 words that we want them to say about about us. And so we did an exercise, and the players came up with, they want to be known as relentless, they want to be known as prepared, and they want to be known as a team that's together. And so one of the great things about doing that exercise is it allows coaches to kind of throw that right back in their face a little bit, and to say, hey, you guys want to be known as this, and I'm telling you, you're not being that way. And sometimes they need a reminder about that. But I think the Ohio State series, then, for me, being able to see things kind of from a different perspective, watching our team, it just didn't seem like the team that I had, come to know throughout the year. We seemed like we were soft. We weren't hard on the puck. We weren't playing together. So that I know they were prepared, because our staff does a great job with that. But that relentless and togetherness just didn't seem to jump off the page to me. And so it was great when I got back. The team got back, and the following week I was feeling much better and able just to share my thoughts, and provide a little accountability there. And so we were able to ramp some things up in practice and kind of get that feeling of playing together, making sure we're not complaining, we're not justifying our actions, but instead, let's take accountability for who we are and what we're about and what we were doing. And so this last weekend was significantly better in that, but still have some room to grow.
I like those 3 words. I mean, really, when you think about sports, that's the essence of it. Yeah.
And, we talked about family. We talked about together, and it was fun really doing that exercise. And one of the players brought up, I feel like family, like you're forced into your family. You're born into your family, right? And so you kind of have to be this way with your family. And she said, I like the word together because – yes, we're together and we're on a team, but we're not forced into having to be, on the same page and playing together and being together. So it was a good experience and a good exercise to go through.
Yeah, and relentless. I've used that term a lot, just in either describing really good teams I've seen or whatever. And that really is, if that's a trait of a team, that team's going to be a good team
for sure. And that's, quite frankly, that's Ohio State. Like they're on you all the time. They're a great example of what being relentless looks like. And to your point, as a commentator or a broadcaster or a fan, like you can tell when a team is relentless.
Yeah.
Like no matter the score, no matter the situation, that team is going to play hard. They're going to be all over it, and they're going to force you into having to make plays.
Yeah, and there's never times where there's time off. So I was in St. Louis before I got here in 01 to 06. Pujols was there, and he was just relentless. Like every at bat, it could be 10-1.
Yeah.
And he's already 3 for 3, and it's this 9th inning, and the at bat really is meaningless, and it didn't matter, man. It was a relentless at bat, and the 04 Cardinal team ended up not winning it. They lost to the Red Sox. Was relentless, relentless, and that's the first time I really like that. That's how you want to model, and it's really good when the best player on the team is the most relentless.
Oh,
player,
for sure,
right? Because then everyone has no choice.
Yeah, if your best player is the hardest worker and setting the tone, everybody follows. For sure.
I thought, and again, a team that didn't end up winning, I thought the men's hockey team last year, for all the talent they had, for me, the most impressive thing for them was, so they had made it the year before to the Frozen Four, and so now you've been through this, where you're like, all right, we just want to get back.
Yeah. Give ourselves a chance.
But where they could skip ahead, like, we're good enough, let's just get through the month of January. They did. I mean, every night it was. They were putting it on people.
They were performing for sure, and confidence goes a long way in that, and talent certainly helps. But being relentless actually doesn't require any talent. Yeah. It's more of a mindset.
And it's impressive when you're talented and relentless. Yes. I suppose your undefeated team would fall into that category. I mean,
for sure,
controlled that year. From the opening puck to the last. No doubt. Sound of the horn.
Yeah, no doubt. And it helps getting off the bus with the best players too, right? Yeah. But they didn't ever take anything for granted, and they just had an incredible belief. I think as I think back to that team, I think more belief than maybe even relentless, like very talented and whatnot. But every time they got off the bus, they just believed that they were going to win. Didn't know how, didn't know what it was going to look like, but they just knew. And there's certainly a big thing about believing in yourself and your team too.
So this group this year for the Gopher women, for you guys, what now as you try to get to that relentlessness that you want to see? What do you think to help build that as you make this charge into the weeks down the road?
Yeah, I mean, it starts in practice, and that was another thing. I had to look in the mirror, and as did our staff, and say, okay, what's our role in this, right? And the first half felt like we were a really relentless group. We were prepared. We were together. We overachieved, maybe in comparison to what other people thought after losing 11 seniors and some pretty dynamic players. And then in the second half, I think naturally players, they see that they're number 2 in the country. Wow, nobody thought we were going to be here. They were 14-3-1. Okay, let's just kind of do it again type thing. And what you realize is it takes a mindset. It takes working hard in practice. It takes continuing to focus on the process versus focusing on the outcome. And maybe we got a little ahead of ourselves and said, well, yeah, we're number 2 in the country. We're fine. And you start slacking in some of those details. And so over the last couple of weeks here, we've gotten after it pretty hard in practice. One of our values is being tough. It's an area of growth for our group. And as it probably is with every person, right? You can never be too tough. Yeah. And so it's just become more of a mindset. We've been talking about it a lot more. We've been bringing it up. We've been doing things in practice to make sure that the group is prepared and not only prepared, but whether it's our leadership meetings or whatever to get people back to being the way that we need them to be.
Yeah, and I suppose I'm accurate in this, in that it wasn't like a malicious thing where, hey, we just want to be lazy or we want to let something slip. Sometimes it just kind of, you slip into something. Yeah. And it takes a weekend or a coach to watch on TV, hours away to say, hey, here we got to redial in here.
100%. And we're 6-2 in the second half. Right. We've lost to 2 teams in the country. We've lost 4 times to Ohio State, and we split with Wisconsin. And so there's no need to hit the panic button or anything, right? But that new perspective has been really helpful. And I told our team when I came back, one of the jobs as a head coach is to, when I see our team about to walk off a cliff, to put up some guardrails or to mention that there's a cliff approaching and we need to take a left or a right. And so we did that, we didn't continue to walk off the cliff. We've taken a left and or a right or whatever it is to say, hey, let's acknowledge that this is where we're at. And try and get better. I will also say that I have these 2 weeks circled on my calendar every year after 24 years of being here, that it's the dog days of winter. You haven't seen the sun in a couple weeks. We're not quite to playoffs. School's back in session, and I think every team kind of goes through these moments, and they often happen with our group, kind of that mid to end of January. And so no need to panic by any stretch of the imagination, but definitely need to keep our finger on the pulse.
And when it's 50 degrees, you might want to be outside.
Well, it's hard to say dog days of winter right now with the weather, and at the same time, it's you're not really seeing a lot of sun and things like that. But yeah, so this is a normal thing. Teams go through it every year, and there's very few teams that everything's perfect the whole year through, and this is something that's going to make us better here at the end.
And every team has a story. Like at some point, wherever this season ends, let's say it ends at the pinnacle, what a great story to tell, right?
For sure.
So you hope that the story ends the way you want it to.
100%. And again, we want to make sure that our experience isn't based on our last hockey game, and that's really hard. But something that for us we want to continue to talk about and continue to believe, and let's just be the best version of ourselves and the best version of this team, and see what we can do.
Short term this weekend, St. St. Thomas, what do they bring, and what will the challenge for the Gophers be?
Yeah, they defend really well. A really good coaching staff. Joel Johnson and Bethany Browsen over there, two of my former coaches, and so it's always fun to play against them. They've got a good freshman class. They're leaning pretty heavily on that group. They work extremely hard, and what we're finding in women's hockey in particular is it's really hard to score. And so we saw that last weekend. Goals were at a premium there in Game 2, winning 2-1 in overtime, and St. Cloud just knocked off St. Thomas just knocked off St. Cloud, number 7 team in the country last weekend, and so that was their first, I think, top 10 win in program history. So certainly playing with a lot of confidence, and we know anytime a team comes in to play the Gophers, we're going to get their best, and so it's going to be pretty important and incumbent upon us to play well.
You've got a little bit of a coaching tree now, right?
I suppose, yeah.
What's that like when you go up against, like this weekend you will be?
Yeah, well, I think they know kind of women's hockey is still pretty small, so we know all their players. They know all our players very, very well, and with video and things like that, it's pretty obvious to know kind of here's what they do and here's how we can try and stop it. And then the question is, can you execute? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely fun. I mean, just in our league with Bethany and Joel, and then Muzzy at Ohio State, Mary Eloshua, one of our former players, is an assistant with the Team Minnesota and the PWHL, and then the number of high school coaches that are former players of ours is really, really neat.
From, as you kind of hit on that from a strategic standpoint, what's it like emotionally to have, I know Joel and you are tight. Yeah. I mean, as tight as you get, right? What's it like now to be coaching against your good friend?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose if we were players playing against each other, there might be a little more, I don't know, passion or get after it.
You might hip check him.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then grab a drink later. But when you're coaching, you're really focused on your own team and how can we do what we can do here to be the best that we can be.
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple of other things. You mentioned goal scoring across the country is down. Abby Murphy, however, has done such a great job. One of the top, if not the top player in the country. What has she meant to the team, and what is, I suppose from here to wherever you guys end up, she's going to have to be the lead person here.
For sure. She's a special player. She knows she puts a lot of pressure and expectation on herself. She knows that our team's going to go kind of as she goes, quite honestly, and that's a lot of pressure. But she's the type of kid and player that thrives on that. Incredibly dynamic. She's fast. She's a goal scorer. She loves to make a great pass here as well, and it's just somebody that we rely on pretty heavily. She plays with an incredible amount of intensity. Sometimes we need to dial that back down a little bit, but as Hugh McCutcheon, I think, said one time, you'd rather try and tame a racehorse than kick a donkey in the butt. So that's Murph. She's a racehorse, and we go as she goes.
Yeah. Now, her supporting cast around her, where does that go now? And do you have some people in mind that are going to come along for the ride? And either, hey, if we can get a little more out of her or a little more out of here, or you keep doing what you're doing, where do you see the rest of the gang? Yeah,
she actually grew up playing with Ella Huber. They're both from the Chicago area and played on the Chicago Mission together. And so they've been line mates ever since Ella and Murph walked in the door. So we've kept them together here in the second half, again, just in the spirit of trying to gather information and be better. We've had different players with Murph and Ella. So this weekend we'll have Ava Lindsay, one of our freshmen, who's a great player, distributor of the puck. She's quick in tight spaces, also a goal scorer. With them, they played together in Bemidji, but Murph was pretty sick that weekend, so we don't feel like it was kind of a true example of what that could be. So we're going to try them together here again, gather some information. We know that Josephine Bouvang she's our second leading scorer. She played with them the whole first half and did a great job. But again, trying to find some balance and things like that. So we can always go back to what we know works, but we want to see if there's any secondary or third options here as well.
Let me quick mention a word from our sponsor. Affinity Plus is your local credit union, proudly serving Minnesota since 1930. Great products, support, and people. It's a banking hat trick. If you're a current Gopher student or a proud Gopher alum, you're eligible to join this financial that wants to build a meaningful banking relationship and put you first. You can meet with a local employee at any of their branches statewide, including right here near campus off of University in Minneapolis. You can learn more and find other ways to connect by going to their webpage, affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. That's affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, federally insured by NCUA. We thank them for their support of the Go Gopher podcast and of Gopher Athletics. They also do great stuff in the community. The Polar Plunges are going to be starting up here with the Special Olympics, and they're the lead sponsor on that as well. A couple of remaining moments here with Brad Frost. We'll talk women's gymnastics later in the podcast with Jenny Hansen, so we invite you to stick around. Coach, your goaltending situation has become kind of a two-player deal, where maybe last year it was more just Skylar. So how is that unfolding for you and developing?
Yeah. You know, Skylar played, I don't know, had to be close to 80% of our games last year and did an amazing job. What we felt last year was if Skylar went down, we were in big trouble. And so knowing that, we had Sophia Johnson back, who's maybe a little more of a third string goaltender for us. We didn't have anybody else and we were concerned. Again, we have to have two. We always feel like we have to have two or three really good goalies, and so we were able to get Lucy Morgan out of the transfer portal. She's from Minot, but played at Maple Grove her last couple of years, and then went out to St. Lawrence. Was an All-American her junior year. A ton of great experience, and so brought her in, and Skylar played maybe 60% of the games in the first half to Lucy's 40, and in the second half we've just really split them down the line, and so we're going to continue to do that until one of them either emerges or they can both continue to play well and give us a chance each night, and maybe we then start looking at certain matchups and who's played well against what team and whatnot. So been happy with them and how they're playing. They were tremendous in the first half. If we're going to have success here down the stretch, they're going to have to continue to be really good.
Yeah, as a coach, how is that one of the trickier things, is if you have two good ones to manage? Because in one sense, I suppose, hey, it's got to help if they're fresh.
Yes.
But I'm sure both would love to play
100%.
both games, all that. You want people who want to compete. And then, you see this in the NHL where they have many more games than you, although you guys are sitting here at 26 or whatever games, ride the hot hand,
yes,
and this and that. And so when you're in late January, early February, is it too early to ride a hot hand? And how do you handle that as a coaching staff?
Yeah. I would say it's one of the more difficult things as a head coach, as a hockey coach. If you've got one goalie that is your starter, you're just rolling them out every night. When you've got two good ones, it becomes a little more difficult because, as you mentioned, they both want to play. Yeah. They both want to be the starter. Yeah. As I've told them, you're getting an opportunity to be that, at the end. The question is who's going to do it. Yeah. And so, again, providing opportunities, I think, is the best way to do it versus just I think this player is playing the best right now or this goaltender's playing the best. We've got data. We've got things that we can look at, as well as the eye test. And so my hope is that they both are really, really good down the stretch, and they make it really hard for us to make a decision. And in college hockey, it's not like the NHL where if you have a 7-game series, you can start a guy and then, all right, let's switch in game 3, give this guy a rest, or they're both. I mean, it's one and done. So whoever starts that first one is going to be an important start. For sure. Yeah. And then, it's, and you've got to win that first one, and then you make a decision for the next one.
Right.
But the first one is the most important one.
Yeah. All right. So this weekend at St. Thomas, both home games, gophersports.com for tickets. I want to ask you about the Pro League real quick before we wrap up, because it's such a cool story developing, good attendance. Looks like it's a legit deal, too, where some players, if that's what they want to do, they can do that. And make a decent living at it, which hasn't been the case, right?
100%. Yeah. One of the things in over the years, starting the league was a sustainable wage, where that could be their job. And so they're getting that. They've got health benefits. They've got, different things where they're not having to pay for their equipment and whatnot. So it's been great. I've mentioned before, I don't think it could have been rolled out any better. All 6 cities are supporting their teams, as you mentioned, with the fan support. The marketing's been great, and here in Minnesota, it's been obviously really, really fun. And they all have TV deals with different local channels, and so to see Bally's pick it up and to have true professional play-by-play people and things like that, it just continues to give credibility to the league, and it's been fun for our players. They've been to a lot of the games, and for them to now think, geez, okay, when I graduate here, this is something that I can do for a number of years before I have to get a real job.
Go do something.
It's pretty neat for sure.
And it sounds like they're probably in a position here where you'd love it to expand and grow, but you don't want to get too big. But it sounds like there's cities now, they see this early success and they're like, hang on a second, this is we could use this in our town.
100%. Yeah, there's a couple cities in Canada. I know here in the States, Pittsburgh has been very vocal about wanting a team. Washington, same thing. And I'm sure there's others that I'm not mentioning, but that's kind of the next step is do you expand to 8 teams or do you expand to 10? How quickly do you do that? And that's above my pay grade for sure. But the number of players that come out of college each year, there's some really, really good players, obviously, and so teams are going to want to start picking some of those players up.
Yeah, I lied. I do want to ask you a couple more quick ones because it does relate a little bit to the Pro League in the sense that college athletics now has an NIL. The transfer portal, as you mentioned, you got a goaltender out of that. How has that impacted you, those two things?
NIL, not a ton yet, but I do think it's coming. We have, the things people forget is with NIL, we really can't do anything as coaches.
Right.
We can't find a booster and say, hey, give this person $10,000 or whatever. So, we have certain players on our team that are more heavily into it maybe than others. And, Abby Murphy, for example, has a few deals because she's Abby Murphy. Yeah. She's an Olympian. She's, people want to use her to promote their products. There's places here in Dinkytown where the girls will get a free meal if they post it on Instagram or something like that. And so there's things from that all the way to, more substantial deals, but it's coming. There's no doubt. And we were talking earlier just about how the landscape of college athletics is changing by the day. Yeah, it's crazy. The transfer portal is what it is. There's one more year, the 5th year. 5 years of eligibility. We have not lived in there, but we've taken advantage of it. Certainly, I think we have 3 transfers out of there, 2D and a goaltender this year, and so I'm not opposed to that at all. But it is kind of hard to navigate because my philosophy is to honor the commitments that we've had and that we've got and to make sure that we make that commitment to a family and so come signing period we want to sign that player but they come in maybe with or in the recruiting process with, okay, here's where I think I'm going to kind of fit. Oh, geez, they just picked up, a transfer D. They picked up a transfer forward or goalie, for example. So it can cause some differences there, but all in all, it's again, it's college athletics, and you have to stay up with the times, otherwise you fall behind.
Yeah, and here we are. All right, hey, St. Thomas this weekend. Good luck. Let's get a couple of good crowds out there.
Yeah, let's do that. Thank you, Mike.
All right, there he is, Brad Frost, episode 106, Go Gopher Podcast.
I'm Clay Geary, walk-on turned scholarship wide receiver for Gopher football.
And I'm Ben Utek, U of M alumni, Super Bowl champion, and Tony Dungy Uncommon Award winner.
We understand championship culture, which is why we're part of the True North family of companies.
True North invests in only elite teams, like the champion team at Sunbelt Business Advisors, Minnesota's largest seller of companies. To learn more about True North and our diverse family of independently owned companies, visit TrueNorthEquityPartners.com.
When we say that Cub milk is the freshest in town, we mean it. Less than 48 hours from farm to store fresh. We guarantee 7 days or more of freshness. It all starts with local dairy farmers who take great care in making sure all the cows are happy and healthy. We support local farm families 365 days a year. And that makes our milk even more delicious. So you always get the freshest milk and the biggest smiles.
It's episode 106 as we roll along with Jenny Hansen, Gopher gymnastics coach in her 9th season now, and well into the 9th season. 6 meets in, 6-0. First of all, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks.
6-0. You got to feel good?
We had a great start. Yeah, I feel really good about where the team's at right now, and just excited to keep it rolling.
Did you think that you'd be 6-0? And how did other people view the program from the outside as this season started?
You know, I really didn't know what to expect, to be honest, going into the season. I know we had a great group of young people working with us, but we have a lot of new faces that are making their debut. And so I didn't have a whole lot of expectations to start the season. I knew we have great potential, but pleasantly surprised at where we're at. I think our consistency's been really impressive up to this point. But to kind of go back, I don't think people thought we would be as high as we are right now. Granted, we lost 8 seniors last year, and I think that, anytime you lose that amount of people, you think it's going to be a big rebuilding. And it's just been really fun to see new people step in. Seniors and upperclassmen take on new roles in addition to our new freshmen. So, we're in a really good place right now.
And as the season gets rolling, are you seeing some of the new athletes that have come on board just continue to gain confidence then, too, as they experiences success?
Yes, I think for sure. I think they're figuring it out, which is always the hope, especially when you've got freshmen, is kind of for them to see how things work. How do you make lineups? How do you keep your spot lineups? All of those things I think are important for them too. Is as much as you tell them what it's like, until you experience it for yourself, you don't quite know. But I think they're starting to see that now, which is really exciting. And
as a coach, as you mentioned, you weren't sure what to expect. So as the season started, what were your thoughts? I mean, do you as a coach go into a year saying, I want to finish in the top 3 here, or let's just see day-to-day improvement, see where we go? And then as the season, now you're 6-0, maybe that shifts. How has that worked for you?
Well, I think for our program, we always want to be a program that contends for a Big Ten championship. And obviously that depends on your competitors big time, and whether, where you fit into that, fit into the Big Ten Conference. But I do think we've shifted a little bit. I think we've had good goals in the beginning, but we were let's see how the season plays out before we continue moving forward. But I think we're in a really good place with this group, and we've got a lot of room to grow, which I think is even more exciting.
And you've played a pretty competitive schedule, too. Yeah. It isn't like you've, run through 6-0 against nobodies, right?
Yeah, no, great teams. We've had great competitors. First meet right away, we faced a couple top 20 competitors right away. And so that was a really good statement, I felt like, for us, right, coming out of the gate. So.
And 2-0 in Big Ten?
Yes.
2-0, right? Yeah,
2-0. Yep.
And so as you look at that now, how does the Big Ten kind of stack in? I know Michigan's always good. I think Ohio State's looks like they're off to a fine start. Michigan State, maybe. Yep.
Yeah, I think those 3 that you mentioned right now, those are the top 3 ranked teams in the Big Ten. I think we're 4th in there right now. And there's a lot of other great teams that are continuing to find their rhythm this time of the year. So the Big Ten continues to get better and better each and every year. And there's so many teams that, could win a Big Ten championship or move to the national championships. So it's exciting for our conference this time, just the growth.
And so you mentioned that you always start the year wanting to contend for a Big Ten title. You're hoping to. Now you feel like you are a contender. You feel like you got a shot.
I think with the growth we see in this team, I think it definitely is possible. Yeah.
All right. So you've got all kinds of good things going on. Penn State, a road, speaking of the Big Ten, another pretty good Big Ten team, right? Ranked in the top 30, I think I saw, and back out on the road. So what do the Nittany Lions bring this weekend? So not at home, but on the road. Yeah.
Well, it'll be our first dual away meet. So a new challenge in that way. And just the order of competition is a little bit different. We go bars, vault, floor, beam, So ending the competition on balance beam, I think, is a new challenge in itself. But I think being in this meet will be a little bit different because we will feel more of the home advantage for Penn State than probably we did in our first away competition. So I think we've got some new challenges that we'll have to adapt to. But obviously, very excited to continue moving through the Big Ten schedule. And Penn State's a great team, so it should be a really exciting meet.
And with young athletes, it's always good to add these data points, right? Where you learn, hopefully you learn through winning, but if not, then you also have other ways to learn. But I suppose every experience is a new one. As you mentioned, this will offer some challenges.
Then. Yeah, for sure. And that's, we're going to have a lot of meets on the road here coming up. So this will be kind of our first opportunity to have a dual meet on the road and gain some experience and definitely learn from it.
And then you've got 3 home meets in the books, right? Yeah, 3.
Yes.
And been well attended. There was a Monday night Iowa match that was it was on TV, which I heard from several people that was kind of fun. My in-laws, in fact, were kind of stumbled upon it and ended up spending the night watching and really enjoyed it. So which one, we can talk TV. I have that on my list a little later in terms of how important TV can be for everything. But the other 2 were weekend duels, and you drew almost 4,000 right this past weekend, which is great. So the attendance continues to be a strong point. Yeah,
it's something that we continue to work on. And we know it brings so much to our team, when they have the crowd behind them and that environment, it makes it so fun for them, and they feed off of it. And so for us, that's important. We want to have as many of our fans there cheering them on, supporting them, and certainly having that home crowd advantage. It makes a difference. So we love having as many fans as we have, and we want to keep it going.
And not to get the cart ahead of the horse, because you've got Penn State this weekend, but looming the following week is, I know each year you look at the schedule, you try to pick out one where, hey, let's fill this place up. And you've got one of the top teams in the country in Michigan coming to town a week from Saturday.
Yes, yeah. Always a top team, and always a big draw. We are also celebrating 50 years of Gopher Gymnastics that night. And earlier in the year, when I showed our alums our schedule, I go, which meet do you want alumni night? And they said Michigan. That was a big selling point for them. Like, we want to be there when Michigan's here, because it's both teams are so competitive, and we've had great competitions against one another the last few years. And so we're hoping we'll continue to bring out the best in one another and just have a fabulous competition at the PAV.
And we mentioned the great crowds that you have had. And when you get a full house like that, I'm not saying that it necessarily can impact what a judge might say, but just the general philosophy of the whole thing can change, right?
Yeah, for sure. The momentum builds, the crowd gets into it, and I think it elevates our athletes' performances. But I wish we had more of a pull with the judges, but, it might rub off here and there once in a while.
Yeah, I can't help but think that human nature, if the crowd's going nuts and you stick the landing on some event and there's those big smiles and everyone's celebrating, that there can't be some human nature involved there that can give you a home gym edge, so to speak.
I hope so.
So someone that's listening to the podcast that hasn't been they've watched on TV or they've watched the Olympics. We talk about this all the time. They're, every 4 years they see women's gymnastics and it's great. Give us a little pitch on what they'll see if they come, not just a week from Saturday, but to any of the meets.
Well, there is a reason why gymnastics is the most watched sport in the Olympics. These women are fabulous. They are so talented. They have put in so much hard work, and they're really performing. They are doing high-level difficulty skills, but they're doing them at such a high level and with such incredible execution that, you might get to see perfection, and it's just really exciting. And to do it in the team concept where the energy builds and the entire crowd gets into it, it really is a special experience. And I hope everybody that just gets a quick glimpse of gymnastics gets a chance to come watch our team, any college team, and see it for themselves in person, because it is one of those things where once you get to see in person, you tend to get hooked and you want to come back.
For sure. And I suppose there are ways to watch. You can watch as a casual fan and just watch the events and soak it in. And that's a great, beam exercise, and that's great on the bars or whatever. But there is also a format that if you really are diving in, you can follow and say, oh, they're going to need to really hit this last, session, because it goes in groups, right, with each event, and the teams alternate. And kind of take us through that to educate us a little bit on how if you really want to deep dive and follow along, that there's a format kind of to follow. Yeah, well, especially with the dual meet, there's 6 competitors that go up on each event. You end up counting 5 of the 6, so you get to drop your lowest score. And at every event, at the conclusion of every event, you kind of see where both teams are. And then you switch events. So in a home competition, we start on vault, the opponent starts on bars, and then we flip-flop. So then we go to bars, and then they go to vault. And the same format, 6 up, you count your 5 top best scores, and then you get a chance to see after every rotation where the teams are at. And then you do the same thing on balance beam and floor exercise, and you flip-flop them at the end. And, in those great competitions, you really just don't know who the winner is until that last routine. And that's, really what you hope for in every meet, is that it's that close, and the competition is just really exciting till the very end. Yeah, I always get a kick, too. It's like, 197.625 to 195.985, and that's you're scoring almost 200 points, and it comes down to tenths of a point sometimes, right? Oh, very much so, yeah. And we talk about with our team sometimes about how can we just get a half a tenth better each athlete, and by the time you do that at the end of a competition, that's a full point. So it really adds up. Those little things make a big difference, and for us, it's just for us to get a little better each and every time. But yeah, it does come down to the half tenths, the quarter tenths at the very end of the meet. It is oh so close. Like if you win by 2, it's a blowout, right? Oh, yes. You win by 2 points, you have blown out the other team. And it's crazy because you'd look and say, you get I'm on EJ's email list, the communications guy, and it would say 198 even, and the other team, let's say 196, I'd say, oh, that was a tight one, just peripherally, you'd say 198 to 196, but that would be blowout city. Yes, it would. Yep. You're talking a couple of tenths of a point is close. That's what a real close meet is like. Yeah. You have some great athletes, and I wrote these names down just as a way of comparison, because I think back, you and I had talked, over the years, some of these all-time greats. I remember Lindsay Mabel, right? Mm-hmm. And she won, I don't remember, 20 weekly awards a season, it seemed like. And we're like, well, no one's ever going to top her. She's an all-time great. Yeah. And then Lexi Ramler and Anna Looper and others have come along. And now Maya Hooten is seemingly winning an award every week as well. Kind of take us through the history of these athletes and how it seems like the competition is allowing each athlete to step forward with each, I don't want to say generation, because they're all within 10 or 12 years here, but or back, I guess, less than 10 years when you go back to Lindsay. But it's pretty cool to see how the competition level continues to just increase. Yeah, and I think they each have kind of attracted the next generation, and kind of like you said, the next 4 years, that next athlete to join after they've graduated. But I very much so, the Anna Lopers and the Lexi Ramlers were inspired by Lindsay Mabel, and Maya Hooten was very much inspired by Lexi and Anna. Even she got to be on the team with them for a little bit. So they've definitely inspired that next group, and they want to live up to what the last ones were able to contribute and how they helped this team be great. But yeah, we've been really fortunate to kind of have some really outstanding athletes over the years, and, always seem to have a few that bring great attention, really inspire the next generation, and hopefully they'll continue that moving forward. And talk about Maya just a little bit, because she is such a show. I mean, really, for lack of a better term, right? I mean, it is worth the price of admission to come and watch her compete. Yeah.
she just brings so much energy and positivity, and she's just so fun to watch. I mean, when you watch her on floor exercise, you can't help but smile. And I know one of my favorite moments, and this has developed over the last few years, is to see our crowd up on their feet before she even begins, you know, and they're ready to clap and cheer on every moment that she competes. And it's your whole crowd is waiting for that routine at the end of the competition. So she is an incredible athlete, just has incredible difficulty, but she does it with such ease that is really impressive.
Yeah, and she's got the great smile, and just, I mean, the personality just oozes out of her through the whole performance.
Yeah.
As a coach, when you watch that, and let's say she nails it, which she normally does, nails a routine, and the crowd goes crazy. What's the emotion like for you? I mean, is that like the hair on the back of your neck stands up even after all these years of coaching and being part of it?
Yeah, it is really special. I think for me, the best part of all that is just watching it. Like, I try to stand back and let her enjoy it with her teammates and just taking it all in, seeing the crowd, enjoy those moments. I think that's really special for me to be able to say, to see those moments happen in person like that. But it is pretty incredible. It is really incredible.
What can she accomplish that maybe she hasn't yet, if anything? I mean, she's accomplished so much. It's hard to, I'm not trying to put pressure on her, but what can she, as her career continues, do yet this year and in the future?
Well, I know it's important for her to lead her team, back to a national championship. She wants to be back there, very, very passionate about being back at the national championship. So I think that's probably the top of her list, is how can I help my team get there? Because I want to be back there. I want to be competing back at the national championship. So I would put that at the very top of her list. She wants to continue competing at a high level, helping her team be in contention for a Big Ten championship. But I would say probably her number one priority is let's get back to the national championships.
And certainly to do that, it's not going to be a one-woman show. She's going to have to be good, but others will have to take part. You mentioned some of the young athletes. Give us a little bit of a Cliff Notes version of who the others are that we should be keeping an eye on.
Well, I'm going to start with our senior class because they are competing a lot of routines for us. Gianna Gertis, who was an all-arounder for us last year, she's very important to the success of this team, has been really steady so far, and we're going to count on her to continue doing the same. Emily Cook is back competing a couple events for us this year, another competitor who's been at the national championships. But then we have a couple of seniors making their debut this year, which is really, really fun for us to see. They have overcome a lot to get here, but Ella Sir George's competing both bars and balance beam for us, and Katie Horak's been an excellent contributor on balance beam. So our seniors are really leading the way and are competing a bulk of our routines for us. So I'd keep an eye out for them. But then we also have some juniors that have stepped up. Lauren Pearl's doing 3 events for us this year, more than she's ever competed before. Our sophomore class is great, but then we do have some freshmen making their debut and have been really consistent so far. So we know they've got room to grow, but just really excited to see their development because I think there's a lot to see yet from them.
Yeah, and how does that position you then beyond 2024? How do you like, and I know there are some athletes you can talk about in terms of future Gophers and others that you're still working on that you hope you can get signatures on, and probably I don't know how young they get when you first start watching and paying attention, but how do you like how things have set now beyond 24?
Yeah, really excited about the future. I think next year is our last year of our COVID athletes. We will have some seniors stick around and become that 5th-year senior, so it'll be a big team for us moving forward, but be able to keep a lot of that leadership, a lot of some core routines will be fantastic. But we've got an incredible freshman group coming in. We signed a Canadian Olympian, Ava Stewart, who will be vying for a spot at this summer's Olympic Games. She's going to be coming in bringing tremendous experience. Macaulay Harrington's another scholarship athlete, just having a fantastic season to start. And then we have a big group of walk-ons joining us, too. So we're going to have a big class joining us next year. So I'm trying not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I'm very excited about what next year and beyond is going to look like.
Yeah, so fun, so exciting. And Minnesota has, not just the University of Minnesota, but Minnesota in general has really kind of been a hub of some headlines in gymnastics, right?
Yes, yeah.
I mean, when you think about some of these athletes.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had, 2 Olympians on the last Olympic game, a couple, I think Suni's trying again here for the next Olympics. So we've got great elite athletes, but then there's so many athletes, high-level athletes that are competing, not only at the University of Minnesota, but other universities around the country. And we just feel like we're kind of a hub for fantastic gymnastics. We're kind of a hotbed for great clubs. There's a tremendous high school program here in the state. And so we just feel we love our Minnesota kids, and we have a big representation of Minnesota athletes on our team, and they're difference makers for us, and we're really proud of that.
And I think people in Minnesota, we know that there's women's or girls high school gymnastics here. That's not the case, right, around a lot of the states. And so you're recruiting high schoolers who might not be on high school teams, but club teams. Take me through that process. I know I've asked you that before, but I think it's always interesting to note the recruiting process.
Yeah. The state of Minnesota sponsors women's gymnastics or girls gymnastics at a really high level. Over 100 high schools, it might be even 150 different high schools sponsor women's or girls gymnastics. We typically recruit more at the club level for those athletes that are in high school. But that's pretty standard throughout the country, as most athletes on your team come from the clubs. But it is just... We've got fantastic clubs, and we have the great support in the high schools as well. So there's just thousands upon thousands of young girls that do gymnastics in the state of Minnesota, and it really is. It's a wonderful place for gymnastics, and I think that's a big reason why we are hosting the Olympic trials here this summer, because it's so well supported here. Yeah, and how much are you looking for? I know you've got a lot going on between now and then, but that's got to be fun for you as the coach of the local university team here to know that that's coming to town as well. Yeah, it is really exciting just to have that energy, and so many fans coming to the Twin Cities area for this incredible event. So, and it'll be fun. We're going to try to get our athletes involved in some of the festivities and certainly support the event. All right. So we talked a little bit of the recruiting process. I got to ask you how we hear about the transfer portal so much, particularly in the high level in terms of the high revenue sports with football and basketball and now hockey even with transfer portal. How, if at all, has that impacted you on, I suppose, both ends, where you're maybe going to try to capture some athletes that might want a new start, but also, hey, we need to keep the athletes you have on your roster here and not leave? Yeah. We haven't been affected to the same degree as these other sports, at least not yet. I hope it stays that way. We've been really fortunate. We haven't had very many athletes decide to leave our program. And if they did, it just wasn't the right fit. They're wonderful kids. They found something different somewhere else, and we certainly wish them the best of luck. We've been fortunate to be able to bring in a few transfers that have been game changers for us, and so we've been really happy with how that has worked out. We'll see how the rest kind of pans itself out. It's not something that we typically are looking to very often. We'll look at the transfer portal here and there, but we really want to just shape the kids that we've got within our program, and hopefully they just have such a great experience that's not even something that's on their mind. Yeah. And remind me, in women's gymnastics, there was never a sit-out year anyway, right? Or was there a sit-out year? Because it varied by sport, and I can't remember what it was. I couldn't tell you on that 100%. I know some of our transfers have been walk-on athletes, so the rules are a little bit different when they're a walk-on athlete when they decide to come to us. So we haven't brought in a scholarship transfer. I don't know if we ever have, to be honest. So I was just wondering if that maybe because of that history, it impacted it a little less as well, because it's kind of standard operating procedure. How about name, image, and likeness? Has that been a factor, and are your athletes some trying to benefit on that? We definitely have a few that are capitalizing on those opportunities. It is something we want to continue to grow within our program, and I'm working pretty regularly with the people here in the department to try to grow those opportunities for our student athletes. Our women are just phenomenal role models. So anything we can do to get them out in the public and being able to speak and sign autographs and things of that nature is something that we're really looking at. And just giving them those opportunities as well to get experience in those ways, because that's really important for them as well.
Well, if I were in charge of marketing for some big company, I would be all over Maya to be one of my spokespeople. That's for sure.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree. And I know she really enjoys those opportunities when they come along.
And there are, who's the LSU gymnast? She's like big time, right?
Yes, Livy Dunn has made quite a name for herself. She's representing many companies and doing so at an incredible level. So, I think she's probably one of the highest earning college athletes ever. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it is amazing.
You have some exciting news, too. Tell us about the potential of a new facility here on campus.
Yes, it is coming. We are so excited. It has been something that I have been looking forward to, honestly, since I was a gymnast here, which is a really long time ago. But this new training facility, which we're hoping to break ground in March, is going to be just a game changer for our program. We have been training at Pike Gym 25 plus years, and it's very much lacking some of the training devices that are essential for our student athletes. Our staff has found a way to still overcome some of these issues that we've dealt with, but this new training facility will be state of the art. It'll have everything they need. We'll have foam pits and every kind of training device you can imagine in this new space, and it's going to be right here in Athletes Village. So the location, you can't be beat, and it's just our athletes, I feel like they're so deserving of this. So I'm so excited for them and for our program, because this is kind of that last piece of the puzzle I felt like for our program is, if we can get this facility, we've got everything that can make a tremendous program.
Yeah, you mentioned it's been, you've been fighting for this, so to speak. How much do you think the just the sheer success, the volume of success you've had in the last few years, just was at a point where we got to do this?
I think that's huge for us. I think for us to be able to have the kinds of seasons we did, even with that up against us, it really kind of showed the department and the state that, hey, they're doing things right. They deserve this. They need this. So I think that helped us tremendously.
And then what does that do for recruiting when you bring prospective student athletes to campus, even just to see, I suppose, a hole in the ground here in the summer, right?
Well, just to be able to point and say that's where it's going to go, is huge for us. But the fact that we're going to be breaking ground here in March, and, when we're competing against these top programs who've had great facilities for 5, 10, 15 years, now we're at least at a level playing field, I feel like, when we recruit. And so that's big time for us, because we always felt like we were at a big disadvantage before, and somehow we continue to find great kids and help develop them. But now the level of athletes that we can recruit just goes up. And that we have a chance to get now has gone up because of this new facility.
So Penn State on the road this weekend, then the following weekend, the big alumni day with the celebration of 50 years. Yeah. Michigan, still some tickets available if people want to. I suppose we better get people though going if they want to go, right?
Yeah, I would go get those tickets now if you want to be there.
Gophersports.com for those tickets, and then you just have one other home meet, right?
Correct. Yeah, we're on the road for several weekends in a row before senior night in March. So we've got quite a stretch there, but that'll be good for us, prepping us for postseason.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that real quickly. I've already kept you way longer than I said I would, but you're so compelling. So here we are. The postseason, then you got the Big Tens, and then hopefully, right, if all goes well, into the NCAAs. And the NCAA is kind of a double weekend. You got regionals, and you try to advance out of that into Fort Worth, Texas.
Correct.
Is still there, right?
Yep, we're still at Fort Worth.
Kind of take us through as you gear into that, what the hope is.
Yeah, we've got Big Ten championships. I think it's middle of March there, towards the end of March. And then it is qualifying to the NCAA championships. In the past years, we've been able to bypass round one. That's always the goal, and get right into round two. And then from round two, you compete, and then you have a day off before round three. And so you're in the same location for rounds 2 and 3. And so the hope is that you can make it to round 3. And then if you're have a great day, you can move on from round 3 to the national championships. And then there's round 4 and 5, the semifinals and the finals in Fort Worth.
Yeah, and the finals, I mentioned we talked TV, and we talked about that Iowa meet being on TV, and how I've heard from numerous people how much they enjoyed that on that Monday night. Over-the-air TV for the championships again, I think, 2 or 3 years in a row now for the NCAA championships, ABC.
Correct.
How big is that these steps are taken now to where finally the potential is getting to where it should be?
It's huge for our sport to be on live TV, on ABC is big, is really, really big. And the growth of TV for gymnastics has continued. Every year we're getting more and more coverage. And just like a lot of women's sports, deservedly so, we're finally getting on these national broadcasts and getting a lot of the attention. And it's so fun to see across the board the amount of people that are watching. All women's sports are really just an all-time high.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to see, no doubt about it. All right, well, good luck against the Nittany Lions. Let's get a sellout the week after that.
That's
and
right.
Best of luck the rest of the way. We'll have you back on the podcast as we get closer to the postseason.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, Jenny Hansen, Gopher Gymnastics Coach, episode 106.
Our thanks to Gopher Women's Gymnastics coach Jenny Hansen for joining us on this week's Go Gopher podcast. It was fun to get to know about her team more, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Our thanks also to Gopher Women's hockey coach Brad Frost. He led off our episode 106. The Go Gopher podcast is presented by Sunbelt Business Advisors and True North Mergers and Acquisitions. If you're buying or selling a business, visit sunbeltminnesota.com or tnma.com. We're also partnered with Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, a locally member-owned full-service financial invested in you. You can learn more at affinityplus.org/Go Gophers. Cubs sponsors the Go Gopher podcast. It's the official grocer of the Gophers. Again, I'd invite you to listen to past podcasts, and please be sure to click the subscribe button right now to the Go Gopher podcast. It's free to subscribe and free to listen at any time. And please won't you share the link to the podcast with others so they can subscribe and listen as well. We'll talk again next week.